I volunteered our guest room to Mark, then slept on the couch myself. That's not the lie that destroyed my marriage. Everyone assumes Daniel left because I cheated, and they're right to judge. They're just wrong about what I actually did. My husband didn't pack his bags over one platonic night. He left because I spent 8 weeks building a parallel universe where another man understood me better than he ever could. And that invisible infidelity terrifies me more than a simple one-night stand ever could. When you hear about the secret Instagram account, the credit card statements I hid, and why Mark was really holding my wedding ring when Daniel walked in, you'll understand why I haven't slept through the night in 6 months. 7 years of marriage had turned Daniel and me into comfortable roommates. He managed a dental practice. I worked as a graphic designer from our spare bedroom. Our conversations revolved around grocery lists and whose turn it was to unload the dishwasher. When Mark's text arrived, his wife had filed for divorce. He'd been living in his car for 3 days. I felt something I hadn't felt in years necessary. Daniel hesitated when I suggested the guest room. Isn't that a little intimate? Having another man stay here? Ud laughed, kissing his forehead. He's basically my brother. 2 days max, just until he finds a place. This thrill that shot through me when Mark responded, "Yeah, literally saving my life," wasn't about helping a friend. It was about being someone's salvation. I told Daniel that Mark would arrive Friday after work. What I omitted, Ud already cleared out half my closet for Mark's things, bought his favorite coffee, and told him our address before asking Daniel if it was okay. When I picked Mark up from the Motel 6 parking lot where he'd been sleeping, I wore a dress I hadn't put on in 2 years. The small thrill of his eyes sweeping over me felt like stepping into sunlight after a decade in shade. This first week passed in a haze of shared takeout and whispered confessions after Daniel fell asleep. Mark and I stayed up until 2 a.m. talking about his failing marriage, my creative frustrations, the dreams we'd abandoned. I told myself Daniel's early bedtime, he had surgeries at 7 a.m., meant I wasn't neglecting him. I was just filling empty hours. When Mark's hand brushed mine reaching for the remote, I didn't pull away. Instead, I repositioned myself on the couch so it could happen again. By day 10, I was volunteering to grab Mark's dry cleaning on my way home from client meetings. I'd tell Daniel I was stuck in traffic, then sit in the coffee shop with Mark for 2 hours while he detailed his wife's cruelty. The text that made me delete my message history came on a Tuesday. "Suttung, next to you feels more like home than my marriage ever did." Stared at those words for 17 minutes. Then erased them, my heart hammering with something that felt like victory. When Daniel asked why I kept my phone face down now, I said I was tired of screen glare. The lie tasted like copper. Mark stayed 2 weeks, then 3. Daniel's jaw clenched when he saw Mark's toothbrush next to mine in the master bathroom. I told him the guest bath was out of toothpaste. I made a mental note to move it, then didn't. This truth I hid beneath layers of justification was simple. I was texting Mark more than I spoke to my husband. 73 messages on a slow day. I'd created a folder on my laptop called Clunt Assets that contained nothing but screenshots of Mark's compliments. When Daniel tried to initiate sex after 3 weeks of Mark living with us, I begged a migraine. The real pain was in my chest, guilt mixing with exhilaration. I told myself that since I wasn't physically unfaithful, I was still the good guy. The night Daniel found the restaurant receipt, a place we'd never eaten together, from the Tuesday I claimed to be at yoga, I lied so smoothly it scared me. Clunt lunch, boring stuff. I must have grabbed the wrong receipt for expenses. Hud stared at me for 7 silent seconds, then nodded. But his shoulders sagged in a way I hadn't seen since his father died. I tucked that receipt from my 4-hour lunch with Mark into my wallet like a talisman, unable to throw away proof that someone wanted my company. Daniel started sleeping in the guest room, the room Mark had vacated after I accidentally washed the sheets with bleach, forcing him onto our couch. I told myself Daniel just needed space. The real reason Muck had confessed he was falling in love with me, and I'd whispered a no, then changed the subject. Consequences arrived like raindrops before a hurricane. Daniel began checking my phone while I showered, finding nothing, because I'd bought a burner phone for Mark to text me on. I'd hidden it in a tampon box, which Daniel would never touch. When our couples therapist asked me to describe my relationship with Mark, I called him a brother going through trauma. Omitted the part where I told Mark about Daniel's erectile dysfunction, his secret fear of being a mediocre dentist, the way he cried after his mother criticized him. I turned my husband's vulnerabilities into bedtime stories for another man. Our friend Sarah cornered me at a party. Muck seems attached. "Are you sure this is healthy?" I'd laughed too loudly. "Hus just grateful. Daniel trusts me." Its words curdled in my mouth even as I said them. My sister stopped returning my calls after I missed our monthly lunch for the third time, always because Mark needed something. The hook I couldn't unswallow came when I logged into our joint credit card account and saw I'd spent 847 on Mark na clothes, therapy copays, and Apple Watch so we could track each other's fitness. I'd categorized it all as home office supplies. Denny'd never checked the statements. I told myself that meant it wasn't really stealing. Its unspooling began the night Daniel came home 3 hours early and found Mark and me in his study. I was showing him Daniel's collection of rare coins, something I'd promised Daniel I'd never do. Mark held a 1909 SVDB penny worth at zara while I leaned over his shoulder, my hand on his back. Daniel stood in the doorway holding flowers he'd bought to surprise me, his face collapsing like a demolished building. I jumped back, stammering about just showing him your hobby, but the truth punched through my chest. I'd wanted Mark to see the most private part of my husband, to understand the man I'd chosen and find him lacking. Daniel didn't yell. He set the flowers on the hall table and walked into our bedroom. I found him holding my journal, the one I kept in my nightstand, the one where I'd written "Muck sees me. Daniel just needs me." I'd read the last 3 months of entries. "You documented our marriage dying like it was a nature study," he whispered. "You gave him parts of me I didn't even know you noticed." I couldn't speak because he was right. I'd weaponized his trust. When I called my mother sobbing, she said gently, "Hannah, Daniel already called me. He wanted to make sure I'd check on you after he left." Support system I'd ignored for 2 months was already aligning behind him. Mark announced he was moving in with a coworker. He couldn't handle this drama. I'd begged him to stay, grabbing his wrist in the front yard. He'd pulled away, saying "Thus isn't what I signed up for." The man I'd risked everything for was abandoning ship first. But the worst truth, the one I promised to confess, is this muck never asked to stay with us. I offered. The night before his first text, I'd seen his Facebook post about sleeping in his car, and I'd typed "You can always stay with us" 7 times before deleting it. When he finally reached out, I responded in 2 minutes flat, my heart racing with something that felt like destiny. I'd orchestrated this entire catastrophe. Daniel discovered the original text thread on my old phone, the one I'd accidentally left charging in the kitchen. I'd saved Mark's contact under Mucka's plumbing, complete with fake service call logs. But the most damning detail, the one that made Daniel's lawyer high-five him in the hallway, was this: on our 7th wedding anniversary, while Daniel was performing an emergency root canal, I'd taken Mark to our beach house. The one Daniel inherited from his grandfather. The one he asked me never to bring guests to without him. I'd given Mark the guided tour, letting him sleep in the master bedroom while I took the couch. I'd snapped a photo of him on the deck at sunset and set it as my phone background for 3 days. When Daniel found that photo, buried in my deleted folder but synced to our shared iCloud, he didn't just leave. He transferred the house title to his sister and emptied our joint accounts, claiming I'd squandered marital assets on my affair partner. The judge called it emotional alienation of affection and awarded him 80 of our assets. Ultimate secret, the one I haven't told anyone until now: Muck's ex-wife called me last week. Not to yell, to warn me. She'd found messages where Mark had detailed his technique for crooking open marriages from the inside. Was his 5th project. When she asked if we'd been physical and I sobbed nah, she'd laughed bitterly. That was his specialty. He never had to touch them. He just made them ruin their own lives. I'd been so focused on proving I wasn't a cheater, I'd missed that I was his accomplice. Its aftermath settled like nuclear fallout. Daniel got engaged to a hygienist from his practice 6 months after our divorce finalized. They'd posted their engagement photos in the same beach house I'd defiled, and the comment section was full of our old friends celebrating his upgrade. My own sister attended the engagement party, posting a photo with the caption funnily, "Daniel gets the love he deserves." I'd been systematically excised from my own life. My graphic design business tanked after a former client left a Google review calling me unethical and deceptive. She'd seen me with Mark at a conference, my hand on his knee while he whispered in my ear. I told Daniel I was there alone. The job offer I'd been counting on, a full-time position with benefits, vanished after HR found my husband's Facebook post, the one where he'd written up to 7 years of marriage. I learned the difference between a loyal wife and a good actress. He never named me, but our town is small. The unexpected consequence that broke me wasn't financial or social. It was physical. I developed a stress-induced tremor in my left hand, making it impossible to use a mouse for precision design work. My therapist, a court-appointed one, since I'd violated our divorce agreement by contacting Daniel, said my body was manifesting the guilt I'd refused to acknowledge. 2 nights ago, I sat in my car outside Daniel's new house and watched him bring groceries inside. He moved with a lightness I'd never seen, humming something as he helped his fiancée carry bags. That's when the real self-awareness cracked through. Didn't miss Mark. I'd never missed Mark. I missed being the woman Daniel trusted enough to let his guard down around. I destroyed that woman for the thrill of being seen by a stranger. Currently, I live in a studio apartment above a laundromat, paying for it with the 20 of assets the judge let me keep. It's been 3 months since Mark's ex-wife called, 2 months since I last attempted to contact Daniel, 1 week since I stopped checking his new wife's Instagram stories. I tell myself I'm healing, but the truth is simpler. I'm just exhausted from performing innocence. This reason I'm confessing everything now is pathetic. Yesterday, Daniel's sister posted their wedding save the date. It's happening on what would have been our 10th anniversary. The venue, that same beach house. The comments are already flooding and so glad he found real love. It's way he glows now, just us for Daniel. Us stared at that post for 4 hours, watching the validation pour in for the man I broke, and finally understood why I needed to write this. My opening confession was a lie too. I said people misunderstood. But maybe they understand perfectly. I let a male friend stay over. Nothing physical happened. But I used him as a wrecking ball against the foundation of my marriage, then acted surprised when the house collapsed. What I've learned isn't pretty. I wanted out, but I was too cowardly to leave. So I imported chaos and pretended to be its victim. The moral ambiguity is this: still insist that technically, I never cheated. And maybe that's the saddest part of all, that I think technicalities matter when you've murdered trust. So here I am, inviting your judgment. Ask me anything. Tell me I'm a monster. But please, when you're done, answer the one question I can't stop asking myself: if I had just slept with him, would that have been kinder than what I actually did? Because at least then, Daniel would have had a clear reason to leave. Instead, I gave him 1,000 paper cuts and called it loyalty.